Miss Bumbleflower is a cold-blooded killer, and I am tired of pretending she's not. She is the face commander of the Peace Offering Precon, advertised as a group hug deck, but that is a lie. Wizards of the Coast is lying to you, and I will prove it. The only other spell that shares the namesake is called Bumbleflower's Sharepot. It lures you in with some yummy food, and then it kills. She doesn't even try to hide her bloodthirsty derangement. And with that, I rest my case. Now that I've dispelled any notion of this group hug farce, let's get into the hyper budget upgrade to turn her into the lethal assassin she was born to be. I'll be replacing 20 cards for $9, with the focus of getting as many of the double spell a turn triggers as possible, growing her strength and keeping your hand full of gas. Solid Footing has got to be my favorite addition. This one white common aura from Ikoria is darn near definitionally draft chaff, but it has everything Miss Bumbleflower could want. Flash, so you can cast it on anybody's turn, a little power boost to stack up the commander damage, and the ability to assign her combat damage using toughness rather than power, since she has that vigilance keyword. If this is the first spell you cast after Miss Bumbleflower enters, she functionally turns into a 7/7 creature, and it's only up from there. This is only in 11 decks right now, according to EDHREC, and that needs to be higher. You can find it for only 2 cents. Quick pause, take a second here, click that subscribe button. You'll be getting easy access to budget commander content, precon upgrades, and more. With Duskmorn right around the corner, there's a whole lot more in store for you. You're not going to want to miss it. Dog Umbra and Cradle of Safety are 2 more cheap flash auras, and I mean that in terms of dollars and mana. Dog Umbra gives your creature Umbra armor, meaning that if the enchanted creature would be destroyed, all damage gets removed and the enchantment gets destroyed instead. You also get the flexibility to cast this on an opponent's creature. It doesn't fully shut them down because they can still use abilities, but they can't attack or block, which could be exactly what you're in the market for. Cradle of Safety offers protection in a different way, granting hexproof to the enchanted creature until the end of the turn. Folks are going to interact with your thick and probably flying commander. Having spells like these at the ready will help shut that down, while keeping your instant speed double spelling game plan intact. These are both also 2-cent spells. Tiger Claws is up to bat now at 2 into green, offering +1/+1 to the enchanted creature and trample. This is another flash aura that can surprise your opponent with a couple extra power to kill a blocker or give you that unexpected trample damage. Miss Bumbleflower is a strong Voltron commander with self-pumping and easily accessible flying. But there are decks that can spam flyers that you need to break through, and a spell like this offering trample is a potent way to do so. This spell is 23 cents. Going back to the protection angle, Timely Ward is our next addition. This is a 2 into white instant speed aura that provides the enchanted creature indestructible. That is a heck of a keyword that will let Miss Bumbleflower play defense against super high powered or death touching attackers, while letting her live through damage based and destructive board wipes. This aura is $1.66. The last flash enchantment is Indomitable Might. This spell is a solid pump of 3 power and toughness, but that last sentence is key. Enchanted creature's controller may have it assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. This is fantastic when swinging in with the bunny, but even on defense, an additional 4 power and toughness is going to turn a safe attack from your opponent's perspective into a lethal mistake. Indomitable Might can be found for 10 cents. We'll get to some more instant speed stuff in a little bit, but let's finish first with the attachables. Alpha Authority is 1 and a green and provides a lasting hexproof to the enchanted creature. That's pretty great on its own, but it also prevents your opponents from blocking with any more than 1 creature. With Miss Bumbleflower's toughness and those counters stacking up, most single creatures aren't going to be able to trade effectively. This is especially good if you tack on Trample, which has already been added and will continue to be. Alpha Authority is $1.78. I told you there would be more trample. Armadillo Cloak is 1, a green and a white, offering 2 power and toughness, trample, and lifelink. The first 2 we've already talked about, but the lifelink is new. You're not going to find any life gain synergies in the deck, but I'm a fan of having some incidental life gain spread throughout a deck if it makes sense. In this case, I think it makes an awful lot of sense, as long as you don't think about it as a rabbit wearing armadillo scales as armor. This spell is 71 cents. Ceremonial Groundbreaker is the only equipment addition, and to keep it 100 with you, it's not the most impressive addition. But what I do like about it is that equip citizen cost deduction from 3 mana to 1. Miss Bumbleflower happens to be a rabbit citizen, able to take advantage of that single mana equip cost to gain that +2/+1 and trample. There are so few decks running this equipment for good reason, but I want to jump at this opportunity to show it a little love. You can find it for 5 cents. The last 2 attachables tie in this enchantment heavy theme while moving us on to the next theme, All That Glitters and Mantle of the Ancients. If there are any Pauper enjoyers out there, I do apologize for the trauma I may have inflicted by including All That Glitters. For those that don't know, this aura was running the show in that format until it got banned earlier this year. It gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. I've added all sorts of enchantments, and the deck already has 5 mana rocks, so the stat line boost you can expect will far outweigh that 1 and a white mana cost. Mantle of the Ancients is a 5 mana spell with a narrower stat line boost, granting the enchanted creature +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it. As you may expect, the value comes from that middle chunk of text. When the aura enters, you can return any number of aura or equipment spells from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to the enchanted creature. This is your insurance policy. Like I said before, Miss Bumbleflower will be a target of interaction, and there will be times you don't have an immediate answer. A spell like Mantle of the Ancients will make sure you can return to a position of strength in no time. These spells are 26 cents and 34 cents, respectively. Vault 101 Birthday Party is another insurance policy. At 3 and a white, you start off with a 1/1 human soldier creature token and a food. The card is intended to give that soldier some birthday gifts with chapter 2 and 3, but Miss Bumbleflower will be getting those instead. For each of those chapters, you can return an aura or equipment from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to a creature you control. It's less action than the 5 mana counterpart, but a little chump blocker and an extra artifact is nothing to scoff at. You can find this saga for 10 cents. Talisman of Progress and Migration Path are the 2 ramp spell additions. I like the Talisman as an extra artifact for All That Glitters, or as a turn 2 play to set up turn 3 Bumbleflower. I can't say I recommend fully tapping out to cast her that early, but there are pods where that's safer than others. I like Migration Path because you can cast it early to set up for your commander coming down with mana available to protect her. Later on, you can still cast it, but it also gives you that instant speed out with the cycling ability, letting you discard it to draw a card. These spells are 29 cents and 34 cents, respectively. Planar Genesis is the last spell in this category as a pseudo-ramp option. For a Simic, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you want, you can put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you're not inclined to, you can instead choose any card from among them to put in your hand, putting the rest on the bottom of your library. You can ramp, you can dig for answers, you can do it at instant speed. Sign me up. Planar Genesis is 24 cents. Before moving on to the last category of instant spells, let's talk about Slip Out the Back. This upgrade is already packing options to defend against targeted interaction and destructive interaction, but in some games, you'll be confronted with a Farewell or a Sunfall, and this is the spell you'll want in that situation. Slip Out the Back first puts a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, and then it phases out. The first thing about phasing out a creature is that it will keep all the counters it had already accrued. The second thing is that it will also phase out anything attached to it. that means equipment, that means auras. There's a real chance that an opponent's farewell could be your best spell if you have this ready to cast. You can pick this one up for 77 cents. This last category is the untapping category, and let's start with Unwind and Rewind. Unwind will have you spending 2 and a blue to counter a target non-creature spell. Rewind is 2 and 2 blue to counter any spell. Both of these instants come with the upside of untapping the presumptive amount of lands you tapped to cast the spell, 3 and 4. This will give you Miss Bumbleflower's first trigger and keep the same amount of mana open to follow it up with a second spell for the second trigger, drawing you those 2 cards. These 2 counterspells are 55 cents and 23 cents. Snap and Turnabout are the other 2 instants of this nature. Snap will return a target creature to its owner's hand, a nice way to temporarily solve for a problematic creature, or a permanent way if that creature was a token. Turnabout is a little more extreme, letting you choose between artifacts, creatures, or lands. After you make that choice, you choose a player and either tap all of those permanents or untap all of those permanents that they control. If you choose yourself, you can increase your mana pool back to the amount of mana all your lands can tap for. Alternatively, you can kind of lock someone out of their turn. Especially in a one-on-one scenario, you can target your opponent's lands during their upkeep. If you've clocked them as not having instant speed spells, or they don't have a mana sink on the battlefield, they're gonna be SOL, and you get to pull another turn ahead of them. These spells are 89 cents and 18 cents. Now, I didn't mess with the mana base at all for this upgrade, but as a special treat for you watching this far, I'm gonna have to recommend the bounce lands. Azorius Chancery, Selesnya Sanctuary, and Simic Growth Chamber. If you're able to sequence your plays to have one or more of these tapped before you cast a Snap or Unwind, you can choose those lands to untap, actually gaining you mana from casting the spell. The strategy for cuts began in a very straightforward fashion, removing the group hug elements that we know Miss Bumbleflower despises. Jolly Gerbils needs you to be giving out gifts. There probably wasn't enough of these spells in the deck to begin with to justify the Gerbils, and one is getting cut as well, making it even less effective. Octomancer is that cut gifter. This isn't a token-heavy deck, and I'm not trying to give my opponents any 8/8s if I can help it. Quain Itinerant Meddler is also gone. This is your bog-standard group hug kind of creature, and that is now our enemy. Selvala Explorer Returned is card draw for the table, and I don't want any more of that than I need with the commander. You do get the possibility of life gain and mana, but it's not enticing enough to keep her around. Sphinx of Enlightenment is more of the same, 3 cards for you and 3 for an opponent. A 5/5 flyer is always nice, but it's group huggy, so it's out. Speaking of 3 cards for you and 3 for an opponent, Secret Rendezvous is also getting the boot. You don't even get a big flyer out of casting this spell. As much as I like bunnies, Tempt with Bunnies and the other Tempt card, Tempt with Discovery, are both getting cut. There is plenty of upside with both of these spells, but oftentimes they don't end up tempting a single soul. Not to mention, they kind of help your opponents, so boo, they are gone. Intellectual Offering is next and is more 3 for 3. It is out of here. Girapur Orrery is group hug, letting everyone ramp, but you will so rarely be triggering the second ability that this is going to hurt you more often than not. Coveted Jewel is a very fun spell that really gets the action going, but massive mana and card draw going around the table is not what we're looking for. Tenuous Truce is more shared card draw, and that's gonna be a no from me, dog. Rites of Flourishing is more mana and cards for everyone, and again, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. That was 13 group hug cuts that were real easy breezy. Now let's get on to the rest. Fisher's Talent is simply too expensive for that level 1 ability. You need to wait until your next upkeep to cash in, and then all you get is a card and maybe a 1/1 fish? There's better card draw options, so unless you're invested in making those sharks in level 2 or octopi from level 3, this can go. Body of Knowledge gives you no maximum hand size, but honestly, I'm not all that worried about that. The plus side is that it's an effective deterrent from attacks. no one wants you drawing a bunch more cards. The downside is that you can't trigger it yourself, and it has no synergies with the deck. Take this one out and play it in a red deck with Star of Extinction. Mr. Foxglove, the secondary commander, is also getting cut. This creature works best when you can cheat out immediate threats. There are some in the precon that turn into massive problems, but no true showstoppers. Realm-Cloaked Giant is not really getting it done anymore. For a 5-mana board wipe, you'd want the upside to be meaningful in some way for you, but there are 0 other giants in the precon, which makes sense. It's a bunch of furry critters. I may have considered it more since I included Solid Footing and the giant has Vigilance, but it also has the same power and toughness, so that doesn't even matter. Triskaidekaphile and Simic Ascendancy are 2 cuts that serve as alternate win conditions. You will be drawing plenty with Miss Bumbleflower, but you need to be casting spells to do so. The math to get you up to 13 cards in hand on your upkeep is not favorable. Simic Ascendancy was more borderline. This is a red flag kind of card when it gets cast. On one hand, an opponent may use their enchantment removal on this instead of your Alpha Authority. But on the other hand, this could be answered with urgent player removal. It's a tricky balance, but I decided against keeping it around. The last cut hurt me a little bit. Communal Brewing. When it comes down to it, it's still a group hug kind of card. You do get those +1/+1 counters on the back end, and even more if people take you up on the drawn card. But even then, the deck is down to only 18 creatures. The value really isn't there anymore. On the bright side, you can slap this into your +1/+1 counter deck where this could make a real splash. You've got Miss Bumbleflower and a bunch of instants to keep her growing and keep her safe. But even after all these upgrades, the deck list is not short of other ways to close out the game. There are a number of creatures that, like I said before, eventually do become a massive problem. Managorger and Colonian Hydra can trample over your opponents. Psychosis Crawler can put the finishing touches on your opponents, dealing that point of damage whenever you draw a card. Jolrael can pump your squad. Combined with the squid remnants of Chasm Skulker, that's another route to a TKO. All that to say, this deck is a more tuned Voltron deck with Miss Bumbleflower at the helm, but a 20-card package can only change the identity of a deck by so much. You'll be dishing out card draw, drawing even more, and be scary in more ways than one. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with what is now no longer the Peace Offering Precon. Thank you for tuning in. I very much appreciate it. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Like the video, let me know how pumped you are for Duskmourn. That set is looking super spooky and I am digging the vibes so far. I'll catch you next time for some more monkeying around.